My name is Anuj, and I belong to a middle-class family. Apart from me, my family consists of my sister, brother, and my parents. Being the eldest son, I was loved the most in the family. My father was a very hard-working person, but over time, he started falling sick, so he couldn't work as much. Despite that, he worked as a manager in a large factory, and due to his dedication, his salary was increased. He had been working there for many years. As the eldest, I felt the responsibility to support my family, especially when my father could no longer bear the burden alone. I had completed my BA, and fortunately, I got a job as a teacher in a government school. Although I didn't really want to be a teacher, I knew I couldn't rely on my father's income forever, so I accepted the position. The salary was quite good, and with my father's and my income, we were able to live comfortably without any shortage. My father was very happy when I started working, as it relieved some of his burden. I also had the responsibility of helping my younger brother and sister with their education. I dreamed of giving my sister a grand wedding because she was our only sister. I loved my parents very much and always listened to them. Initially, I used to teach different classes period-wise, but later I was assigned the responsibility of teaching the 7th grade. It had been a year since I started working, and by then I was fully responsible for teaching the 7th grade, which had 35 students. Both boys and girls studied at our school. With new admissions coming in, everything felt new and exciting for the students. Our school went up to the intermediate level, and I always taught the students with a lot of love. I never got angry at them and always treated them with kindness, which is why the students trusted me and focused on their studies. One day, I was checking my students' notebooks in class when a girl came up to me. She was 12 years old and a 7th grade student. She stood beside me and suddenly said, "Sir, I will marry you." I was deeply focused on checking the notebooks and was quite busy, so when I heard her words, I was startled. I looked at her, confused, and asked, "With me?" I thought maybe I had misheard. I asked her again, and she confidently repeated, "Sir, I will marry you, and you will be my groom." Hearing this again, I was taken aback and stared at her for a while. She was speaking with such authority, as if what she said would definitely happen. What surprised me even more was the firm, truthful tone in which she was saying it. I asked her, "What are you saying?" Her name was Nina, and she was a very innocent-looking girl. She repeated, "Sir, you will marry me. I will be your bride, and you will be my groom." When she said it again, I couldn't help but laugh. I dismissed her words as a joke and didn't scold her. Instead, I simply ignored her statement and sent her back to her seat. Afterward, I got busy with my work again. I had brushed off her comment because she was just a child. However, every time I saw her after that, her words echoed in my mind, and I would just smile to myself. Naina was a very intelligent and beautiful girl, and she was the most brilliant student in the class. This was why she caught the attention of all the teachers, including me. My teaching method, however, is that I see all the students equally and treat them the same way. I never make comparisons between students based on their intelligence because I've been through that experience myself and know how awful favoritism feels. That's why I always make sure not to pay attention to such things. I ignored the child's words, feeling there was no need to take them seriously, but I did enjoy her innocent comment. When it was time to leave, I left the school and headed home, hoping to get some rest. After reaching home, I freshened up, ate my meal, and then went to my room to lie down. I had just closed my eyes for a moment when, suddenly, my room door opened, and someone entered the room. Hearing the door open, I opened my eyes and saw that it was none other than my mother. Upon seeing her, I sat up straight as she came and sat down in front of me. I asked her, "What happened, Mom? Weren't you resting?" My mother smiled at my question and said, "Yes, I was, but I needed to talk to you about something important, so I came to your room." Hearing this, I was puzzled, wondering what important matter my mother wanted to discuss with me that she would leave her rest for it. I asked her, "What is it, Mom? What do you want to talk to me about?" I was quite surprised, and once again she smiled and gently held my hand, saying, "Yes, I want to talk to you about something very important, and I'm doing it now because your father needs your answer." This time, my mother's words made me even more confused, and I looked at her with a puzzled expression. She then said, "We want to get you married. You're at the right age for marriage, so I've found a girl for you. I've come to ask for your opinion so that we can give a response to the girl's family." She continued, "The girl is good, well-educated, and comes from a well-off family. There's no lack of anything in their household. Your father liked everything about them, and I also really liked the girl, which is why I want to know your opinion so we can invite them over to meet you." I replied, "Mom, I don't want to get married right now. It's only been a year since I started working. I want to focus on earning more before I think about marriage." My mother then said, "Son, think a little about your mother too. Your sister is young and goes to school. All the household chores fall on me. My old bones don't have the strength to do all the work anymore. Your sister is busy with school and tuition all day, and I am left alone at home. If a daughter-in-law comes into the house, I will have someone to help me, and I will feel more at peace. I want to see my grandchildren while I'm still alive. I don't want to leave this world before I witness my son's wedding." I responded, "Mum, why are you saying such things?" After listening to everything my mother said, I looked at her in surprise, and the words of that girl Nina suddenly came to mind. Earlier today, she had said to me that she would marry me and I would be her groom. At the time, I had laughed it off, but now, discussions about my marriage were actually starting. My mother then asked, "Where are you lost, son? Give me an answer quickly so I can inform the girl's family as soon as possible." Her words jolted me back to reality, and I responded, "No, nothing. I was just thinking about something else. Do whatever you think is best." I loved my parents very much and was happy with their decision. I knew that whatever decision they made for me would never be wrong, so I respected every choice they made for me. Hearing my answer, my mother was very happy and blessed me before going back to her room. She also reminded me to get some rest since I had to wake up early for school. Being the eldest son, I was the most beloved in the family. Everyone at home adored me, and my younger brother and sister both respected me a lot. I had also enrolled both of them in the same school where I worked. Initially, I started teaching for fun, even though I wanted to pursue a different job. But for now, this was enough. I thought that if I ever found a better job, I would leave teaching for something else. However, at present, we lacked nothing. With my father's and my earnings, the household was running smoothly. It had been a year since I started working at the school, and my father was very happy with my job because I had earned it based on my abilities. I was quite intelligent, which is why the school soon increased my salary. I taught the students with great affection, and everyone at school respected me, both the staff and the students. My father was proud that I had quickly learned to take responsibility. Now, I was fully responsible for teaching the 7th grade. I had accepted this responsibility without hesitation and was focused on teaching, not concerned about which class I was assigned. I had become the permanent teacher for the 7th grade and taught those students regularly. Naina came to me again and, in a firm tone, repeated her claim that she would marry me and that I would be her groom. Once again, I laughed it off, thinking that she was just a child. Kids often say such things. I had already given my consent to my parents for the marriage, and my response had reached the girl's family. My mother informed me that in a few days, the girl's family would come to our house to meet me. I nodded in agreement. On another day, I was teaching the 7th grade class when Naina suddenly approached me again and said, "Sir, I will marry you, and you will be my groom." Hearing the same thing again, I was surprised, but laughed it off, thinking, she's just a child, and what could I do about such a meaningless statement except laugh? I brushed off her words once again, and after saying this, she went back to her seat. The thought also left my mind as I became busy with the other children, but in the coming days, I started realizing how firm that girl, Naina, was in her words. She would say the same thing to me every day: "I will marry you, and you will be my groom." Initially, I laughed it off and dismissed it as a joke, but how long could I keep doing that? Things were getting out of hand, and it was becoming too much for me to tolerate. I felt like any day now I would lose my temper with her. I couldn't understand why she kept saying the same thing to me every day, and for no reason at all. One day, I scolded her and explained that she should not talk like that. But even then, she didn't get it and kept repeating the same behavior. I was becoming more and more irritated by her words, and I couldn't find a solution to make her stop. I couldn't tell any of the other teachers at school because I knew they would just say, "She's a child, she's innocent, just ignore her words." But I wasn't able to overlook her words, thinking of her as just a child, and I was fed up with hearing the same thing every day. That day, too, I was sitting in my chair, checking the students' notebooks when she came up to me and repeated the same thing she always said. This time, I could not tolerate it anymore, and I got really angry, even though she was standing there with an innocent look on her face. At first, I tried to explain gently, "Naina, dear, you shouldn't say things like that." But then she repeated the same thing again, and I became even more frustrated. I scolded her and said, "Tomorrow, bring your father to school." When I said this in anger, she replied, "Sir, my father can't come to school." I wanted to call her father to the school so I could explain her behavior and have him tell his daughter that such talk wasn't appropriate. She wasn't listening to me, but I thought she would listen to her father. She looked at me with a very innocent face and said, "He can't come." I was furious at her refusal, but managed to control my temper and asked gently, "Why can't your father come to school?" Naina replied, "Sir, my father is disabled. He can't walk. You'll have to come to our house to meet him." I was taken aback, surprised to hear that her father was disabled. I didn't want to believe it at first, but Naina was in 7th grade, and she wasn't so young that she would make up such a big lie. Her father must indeed be disabled for her to say something like that. Hearing her words, I nodded, as I had already decided that after school I would go to her house to meet him. I spent the rest of the day ignoring Naina's words and kept myself busy with work. After school, I picked up the necessary paperwork and left the school. Naina was walking with me because she remembered, just like I did, that I was supposed to go to her house to meet her disabled father. After walking for about 10 minutes through the streets and alleys, we finally reached her house, which was not very big, but rather a small, old house. I entered the house with the girl. The walls of the house looked strange, old and a bit like something out of a horror movie, which made me a bit uneasy. But I gathered my courage and looked around for Nina's father, who was nowhere to be seen in the house. I walked through one room, then another, then the courtyard, and finally the kitchen. But I didn't see Nina's mother or father anywhere in the house. Naina had told me that her father was disabled and couldn't go anywhere, so he should have been in the house, but I couldn't find him. I was getting worried, so I asked Naina, "Where is your father?" She said, "My father is in the room over there." I looked toward the room, but as soon as I glanced at it, I was shocked because I had already checked that room. It was empty. At her insistence, I went into the room. I thought, what harm is there in looking again? But as soon as I stepped into the room, I felt the ground shift under my feet because I heard a woman's voice behind me. When I turned around, I was startled and let out a scream because a large woman was standing there, glaring at me. I angrily asked her, "Who are you?" The door was open, but I couldn't see Naina anywhere, and the woman was blocking the exit. I had no way of getting out. I didn't know who she was, but I was very scared of her because she looked extremely angry. I was now regretting coming here and started worrying that I might get into serious trouble. The woman said, "I am Nina's mother, and now you will marry Nina." My eyes widened in shock. I yelled, "What nonsense are you talking about?" The woman glared at me and said, "Watch your tone and come along. Your wedding preparations will be made now." I said, "You're a woman and I respect you, but how can you force me to marry your 14-year-old daughter? I'm 24 years old, and besides, I'm already about to get married. If you're so eager to marry off your daughter, find someone her own age." I said this angrily and began to walk toward the door. But before I could even step outside, something heavy struck the back of my head. I was so stunned that I couldn't process what had happened. The blow to my head was so hard that I was in immense pain, and when I turned around, I saw that Naina's mother had hit me with a stick. The pain was unbearable, and the next moment, I lost consciousness and fell to the ground. Everything happened so suddenly that I didn't even have time to think. I don't know how long I remained unconscious. When I woke up, my head was throbbing with pain, and I felt dizzy. The blow still affected me, and my eyes were heavy. I tried to ease the pain by pressing my head, but I couldn't think clearly. As I started recalling what had happened before I blacked out, I realized I was in a dark, dingy room. My back was hurting too, and there was a foul smell in the air. This was not the house Naina had brought me to earlier. It was some other place, a deserted room filled with junk, and I was filled with regret for trusting Naina and coming here. I thought about my mother, who must be waiting for me at home, worried. I didn't know how long I had been locked up in this room. I missed my family and was anxious about their well-being. I kept wondering why I had come here and how I could escape. I searched for my phone, but it wasn't with me. The woman must have taken it. I didn't know who she was or why she was doing this to me. I was completely lost. I pounded on the door and shouted for help, but no one responded. Defeated, I sat down and waited for someone to come. I didn't know how much time had passed, but my family must have been frantic with worry, wondering where I had disappeared to. Who was this woman, and what did she want with me? Was she planning to kill me? But she had said she wanted me to marry her daughter. There was no way I would agree to that, because I wasn't that kind of person. Many girls studied at my school. It went up to the intermediate level, and there were young women in the school. But I had never looked at any of them inappropriately. I only taught them, and my relationship with the students was strictly professional. I respected them all and always spoke to them with manners. So how could I marry Nina? I had no idea whether it was day or night outside. I had lost track of time in that room. I would think for a while, then stand up and sit back down, because I was feeling extremely hungry. The woman who claimed to be Nina's mother had left me locked up here and hadn't even checked on me. The more I thought about it, the more frustrated I became, and eventually I fell asleep. The next time I woke up, it was to the sound of the door opening. I opened my eyes to see the same woman entering the room. She had a bag in her hand, which she handed to me, saying, "Here, eat this." I was very hungry, so I quietly took the bag. I asked her, "Why are you doing this?" She replied, "I don't have the strength to argue anymore. Your mother made a promise to me that she would marry you to my daughter, but she has forgotten that promise. And when I reminded her, she denied it. I won't let her off so easily. That's why I tricked you into coming here, so I could make sure you marry my daughter. Now take these papers and sign them." She was speaking with a lot of anger as she handed me the papers and a pen. She wanted me to sign for a court marriage. I took the papers from her, and when I read them, I exploded with anger. I realized they were marriage papers, already signed by a girl, probably Nina. I shouted, "What kind of mother are you, handing over your innocent young daughter to a much older?" The woman got angry and started telling me, "Didn't your mother tell you the truth? Your mother promised me that she would arrange your marriage with my daughter." And just as she was saying this, her phone rang. She picked it up, looked at me while talking on the phone and said, "I'll come back tomorrow, and I need your signature on these papers no matter what, or else things won't go well." She threatened me and walked out. I was extremely disturbed, wondering what she was talking about. Now I, too, wanted to know the whole truth, so I didn't try to run away. I wanted to understand why Nina's mother was so eager to marry her daughter to me. I ate dinner, but that night passed with great restlessness. She had only given me one meal, probably hoping I would agree to marry her daughter and sign the papers. I had full faith in my mother that she could never make such a promise. The next day, the door to the room opened, but it wasn't the woman who came in. It was a man. But I was shocked to see that the man was in a wheelchair, meaning he was disabled. The first thought that came to my mind was whether he might be Nina's father. Without me asking, he introduced himself. "I am Nina's father, and the person who's kept you here is my wife, Nina's mother." The man was around 40 years old, while his wife was about 35. I tried to ask him something, but he gestured for me to stay quiet. Without answering any of my questions, he signaled for me to follow him. I quickly followed behind him as he wheeled himself, and I walked alongside him. After leaving the house, he took me through several lanes for about 20 minutes until we arrived at another house. This house was spotless and 2 stories tall. It was as beautiful on the inside as it was outside. He took me to a room and locked the door from the inside. The man asked me to freshen up. At his request, I washed my hands and face and sat down in front of him. He called out, "Nilu dear, bring the food." A beautiful young girl entered the room holding a tray of food. The man introduced her. "This is my daughter Nilu. Please eat. I'm sure you'll like the food she's made." I refused to eat and asked him why he had brought me to this house. The man said, "I'll answer all your questions. Don't be afraid and feel free to eat my daughter's cooking." Since I had been hungry for a long time, I ate first. The food was delicious. After I finished eating, the girl took the tray and left. The man began to speak. "Because of my wife and daughter, you have suffered a lot, and for that, I sincerely apologize. Please, if you can, forgive my wife and daughter." The man folded his hands in front of me. I grabbed his hands and shook my head, signaling that he didn't need to apologize. I released his hands and asked, "Is what your wife said about my and Nina's marriage true?" The man nodded in agreement, which shocked me, but then he added, "It's not the whole truth." Puzzled, I looked at him, trying to understand what the full truth was. The man then continued, "I'll tell you the complete truth." His words caught my attention. I had every right to know what had caused me so much trouble in the last few hours. He began his story. "I married my wife Sunita, and she and your mother were very close friends, childhood best friends in fact. They were practically the same age, with just 1 year's difference between them. After your mother's marriage, you were born first. Your birth brought immense joy to your mother because you were a boy, and this made her very happy. 5 months later, my daughter was born, the one who just brought you food. At that time, you were 5 months old, and when my wife gave birth to a daughter, she was disappointed because she had wanted a boy. But your mother promised that she would ask for Nilu's hand for her son. This made my wife very happy, knowing that their friendship would soon turn into family ties. Your mother made this promise, but perhaps she forgot about it. However, my wife has never forgotten, and to this day, she remembers it vividly. Nilu also knows about you, as my wife has constantly reminded her that her future husband's name is Anuj. So Nilu has always held you in her heart and never thought of anyone else, because from childhood, she was told that her marriage was already arranged. I worked in a bank and made sure to educate my daughter. Years later, my younger daughter, Nina, was born. Time passed, but your family stopped interacting with ours. When Nilu turned 18, I had an accident, and as a result, I lost the use of my legs. The accident happened because of your father's car. He could have taken me to the hospital and helped me, but instead, he fled the scene. When my wife found out, she blamed your father for my condition, and from that moment on, she sought revenge. The love she once had for her best friend turned into a deep grudge. She became determined to ensure that you marry Nilu, and once Nilu was part of your family, she planned to make life difficult for your mother and wrest control of your father's entire property. This was all part of my wife's revenge, but my daughter Nilu was innocent. She had no desire for any of this. Nilu is a sweet, understanding girl, nothing like her cunning mother. I've tried to reason with my wife, but she wouldn't listen to me. Nilu told her mother that she would never cause trouble in her in-laws' house after marriage, but she still wanted to marry you because she had loved you since childhood. Nilu didn't want to use you for revenge. My wife, however, couldn't let go of her grudge and then turned her focus on Nina when Nilu refused to go along with the plan. She started using Nina as her new weapon. She even enrolled Nina in your school deliberately, instructing her on what to say to you every day, hoping you would fall into her trap. Nina's words were part of a well-thought-out plan to bring you here and force you to marry Nina, since Nilu wouldn't participate in her revenge scheme. My wife is blinded by her desire for revenge and is ready to do whatever it takes. She's been instructing Nina to say all these things to you. Naina's mother only wants revenge, not my daughter. Naina herself is innocent in this matter. But when Nilu refused to play along, her mother turned Naina into a pawn. Her mother's mind has been poisoned by thoughts of revenge. After hearing his story, I was shocked. This whole thing was about revenge, and I had been caught up in it. The man then told me, "You are free now." He let me go, and I hurried back home. My family was frantic due to my disappearance, but when they saw me safe and sound, they embraced me. When they asked what had happened, I told them everything. They were just as shocked as I was, unable to believe that my mother's childhood friend could do such a thing. My father lowered his head in shame. He admitted that he had been too scared to help after the accident, and that's why he didn't take Nina's father to the hospital. He said he wanted to apologize to Nilu's father and would go to him with folded hands. My whole family went to Nina's house. When we arrived, Nina's mother was furious at her husband for letting me go. She was enraged when she saw my father, but my father apologized to Nina's father. After some explanation from her husband, Nina's mother finally calmed down. But she had one condition. I had to marry Nilu. I agreed to her condition, and a few days later, I married Nilu. After that, the friendship between my mother and Nina's mother became as strong as it had been before. Everything between the two families was back to normal. Nilu was a wonderful girl, and I liked her from the moment I saw her. I had taken responsibility for her, and now I'm very happy with my wife, Nilu. My mother doesn't see her as a daughter-in-law, but as her own daughter. I had no objections to my parents' decision, and everything worked out fine. We are all very happy now, and life is peaceful. We often tease Nina by bringing up the old days, and she gets very embarrassed because she only did what her mother told her to. I'm still working at the school. After my marriage, the friendship between my mother and Nilu's mother has grown even deeper. Naina has grown up now, and whenever we remember the past, we laugh and tease her.